This hour on America Forum, a huge Newsmax health story. Scientists cloned stem cells from a 75-year-old man in a major breakthrough that could revolutionize modern medicine treatment. Newsmax Deputy Health Editor Nick Tate joins us to explain how the success could lead to tailored treatment for individual patients and how organ donation could be replaced by organ cultivation.
And a new Gallup poll shows Americans believe the best long-term investment lies in real estate. The CEO of McCabe Research and Consulting, Jack McCabe, will be here to discuss whether those beliefs are misplaced and also offer his own take on the outlook for the housing market.
And if you're looking to speed up your chances of promotion, a new book, The Curmudgeon's Guide to Getting Ahead, could be just what you're looking for. We'll talk to author and social historian Charles Murray about how to go about impressing senior management in the Obama era as America's Forum continues.
And as we join you for this final hour of America's Forum on this Good Friday, I'm struck by the diversity of stories here today, John. We've got, let's see, a curmudgeon's guide to getting ahead. You young folks at home will want to listen to this, coming up with Charles Murray. And of course, we've also got real estate with Jack McCabe. We've got a good friend over here with a huge story in healthcare.
Yeah, and the word I was looking for before was cultivation.
Cultivation.
I had a little trouble with that one, but it's a complicated story here. We're talking about stem cells and a huge new advancement, but let's start at the beginning, as it were. Just 18 years ago, back in 1996, scientists in Scotland took the nuclear DNA from a cell of an adult sheep and placed it inside another sheep's egg. That egg was then implanted into a third sheep, and the result, anybody remember, back in 1996, was Dolly, the first successful cloning of a living mammal. The successful cloning of a human, though, proved much more complex. But now, in 2014, a breakthrough has finally occurred. Stem cells have been cultivated from human adults using similar cloning techniques to those which created Dolly. Although there are strongly voiced ethical concerns about embryonic stem cells, they can be manipulated to form any sort of human cell, providing endless possibilities in combating disease and developing patient-specific lines of cells. In the theory of series of cell lines could be produced along a close match of the majority of would-be cell recipients. In the same way, the transplant surgeons currently match organ donors to patients. There are also tremendous opportunities for advancements in research by growing tissue cells involved in diseases and studying them directly rather than relying on mice or other animals as proxies.
This is an exciting breakthrough, and with us now to discuss the potential applications for these new developments, our good friend and Newsmax Deputy Health Editor Nick Tate. Nick, it's great to have you back, and as always, public policy and public health convene here. We made mention of embryonic stem cells, and in my final election for Congress, that was one of the major issues. These cells, are they embryonic or are they adult stem cells, and exactly how does this process work?
They're different. I mean, as you say, sometimes medical science and political science compete with each other and fight each other, but in this case, what they've actually done is they've taken the cells from adult human beings and they have implanted the DNA from those cells into unfertilized eggs, so that when they jolt them with a little dose of electricity, it produces these sort of pre-embryonic cells that are loaded with stem cells, master stem cells, that can be coaxed to develop into all kinds of different tissues to grow organs, vessels, tendons. And the hope is that this approach will not only sidestep the controversy over the use of embryonic or fetal cells in this kind of technique, but you can use a patient's own cells to grow organs and to develop treatments for those diseases that person may have.
And so what we're talking about here is regrowing our own joints, our own tendons, our own organs. And so what does that mean for lifespan, eternity?
Well, that's a good question. It certainly will allow us, we think, to live longer and live better. At this point, I have to point out it is a major step forward. In medicine, we don't like to usually use the terms breakthrough, but this truly is one of those. It's another step along the line toward individualized medicine. So if you have a problem heart, if you have Alzheimer's, if you have Parkinson's, or a likelihood that you will develop those diseases, this approach might lead you to a tailored technique that could extend your life.
So again, I want to make sure I understand this, and I did pretty good in high school biology, but that's kind of where I left things in terms of this, until, again, on the Hill, you try to mix the ultimate moron, the ultimate oxymoron, political science. Some did call me the ultimate moron there. That's another story for another time. But mixing political science with biological science. The real concern for a lot of ethicists is any involvement of embryonic cells, whether they have been fertilized or not. Now, when I was on the Hill, one of our really great guys, Dr. Roscoe Bartlett, professor, incredibly intelligent guy from Maryland, used to talk about pluripotent stem cells and eliminating any embryonic involvement. Are we seeing any potentiality for that pluripotent step now? What's going on there?
That's exactly what these are,
Okay.
as those pluripotent stem cells are being used, as opposed to cells that are harvested from embryos. They're taken from the skin cells of the patients. You take the DNA from the skin cell of a human patient, and you basically implant it into an unfertilized egg that's taken from a woman, and you grow these pluripotent stem cells. They're called blastocysts, if we want to get technical with science, but they're essentially little balls that contain these stem cells, and so you do sidestep that question of embryonic stem cell. Interestingly, though, this research was funded by the South Korean government and a private foundation, because in this country all kinds of cloning is banned. You cannot use federal funding for the kind of therapeutic cloning that we're talking about here, or what's called reproductive cloning, where you could take this blastocyst and you could implant it and it could grow into a DNA clone.
So still ethical concerns exist, clearly.
Right, and in fact, at this point, this kind of research could not be funded by federal funding. And what I expect is likely to happen, though, that beyond the promise that this presents for medical research and for developments of tailored treatments of Alzheimer's, heart disease, and cancer, and MS and other things, it's almost certainly going to kick off the debate again and renew the debate that you remember having about whether or not stem cells should be used, whether they shouldn't be used, whether there are other ways to do this. But at least on a kind of a literal scientific level, it sidesteps the whole question of the use of embryonic stem cells, because these are adult stem cells.
And that is one of the major objections, but other bioethics considerations, for example, how would you warehouse the cells? Does this offer the potentiality of a complete cloning? And then what about the notion of involuntary servitude? You can almost hear an emerging notion of clones' rights. What does it mean to be human? I mean, this could go into a debate that seems to be the stuff of science fiction.
It's with us today. I mean, it's not future science fiction. It's today. It's actual science fact right now. And these are the issues that we have to grapple with. With all kinds of technology, the question is, just because we can do something, should we do something, as you suggest? The 3 points you mentioned. The idea is that one day there might in fact be stem cell lines, maybe 100 or dozens of stem cell lines that are banked in the way that blood is now banked or organs are now banked. That's number one. Number two, I don't know if anybody's gotten to the point of whether there would be rights to individual clones that would be developed, but the question of whether you would be able to use these lines, whether they would work in the same way that blood works. There are questions about DNA matches and genetics that. So what I would say is this: we've taken one giant leap forward, but there are many more that would need to follow. But the time for discussing what we should do, what we shouldn't do, regulations, what should be done, what should be banned, what should be permitted, is right now.
Well, you mentioned the future is now, and this is kind of a subplot to this story here. But the issue of cloning, we saw Dolly back in 1996, but cloning is here in this country already, not with people. But I personally have interviewed folks in this country who have cloned dogs before, so we know it's possible. The question is, how far are folks willing to take that? They've already done that with dogs. Will they do that with humans? Will that ever be acceptable in this country?
That's really the question. That's a deeper question that I don't think I can answer. I mean, depending on your political perspective, depending on your theological perspective, depending on what you think the human soul is and when that begins, these are all deeper issues that science just begins to scratch the surface of.
And it really does, in terms of, on this Good Friday, a theological perspective. Will we find out that a soul is something independent of a non-providential creation, and just amazing stories and controversies continue to grow out of this. I appreciated too your observation. I think it was a giant in the journalism business, Fred Friendly, at one point the president of CBS News. Just because you have the right to do something doesn't necessarily make it right.
Exactly true. And there's no better time than this weekend to be talking about those issues. Are we merely biochemistry, or is there more going on?
Well, fascinating discussion, a fascinating debate to be had here, and a good one for a Good Friday to have as well. What do you guys think about this? Are we getting closer to cloning humans, or would you be willing to accept a cloned organ or a cloned joint if doctors could do that? We want to hear from you. You still got plenty of time to write into us here. You can reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter is a good way to talk to us. You can find us at Newsmax TV. The hashtag for that is America's Forum. The email address, connect@newsmaxtv.com, and then there's Facebook, facebook.com/NewsmaxTV. When we come right back, we'll talk more about the real estate world. Is that really the best place for your dollars these days? The real estate market's still down a little bit, but it could be coming back. An interesting look at that topic when we return here on America's Forum after this break.